So, picture this. I'm walking into my parents' 30th anniversary dinner, all dressed up, feeling like tonight finally matters. And then, bam, my seat taken by my brother's new girlfriend. Yep, just sitting there like I didn't even exist. I mean, what do you do in that moment? Sit somewhere else. It's humiliating, confusing, and honestly, it's the start of something, well, wild. And trust me, what happens next, you don't want to miss it. I arrived at Lemire, this swanky French bistro that smelled like money and expensive candles, and oh man, and my leg was screaming at me. Not just a little, but that dull, persistent ache that goes from your ankle up to your knee. 3 weeks out of reconstructive surgery, supposed to be off my feet for a month? Yeah, right. Here I was, limping, leaning heavily on a cane I'd tried to make look like a fashion statement, sweating bullets even though the foyer was barely warm. I straightened my emerald green tuxedo jacket, took a shaky breath, and told myself, okay, tonight is about them. Tonight I finally make them proud. My parents' 30th anniversary, 30 years, a lifetime of ups and downs, passive-aggressive digs, silent treatments, the whole messy package. And I had orchestrated this dinner, pulled strings, got a private alcove, curated a menu, all of it. And then there was this envelope in my inner pocket, $5,000, scraped together after double shifts, skipped physical therapy appointments, ramen dinners for 2 months, all for their second honeymoon cruise, something they'd moaned about for years. I adjusted my cane again, and trying to mask the tremor in my hand, I stepped around the corner toward the private table, and then it hit me like a sucker punch. The round table, set for 4, sat my mother in a silver dress I had bought her, radiant and unbothered. My father, Gary, next to her, laughing at something I couldn't hear, and in the seat directly across from them, my seat, the one with the ergonomic cushion I'd specifically requested for my ankle taken by some stranger, young, blonde, maybe 22, wearing a dress that was all wrong for the venue, and she was leaning into my brother, Kevin, who had promised to pick me up because, well, you know, my leg. But he'd ghosted me 3 hours ago, leaving me to Uber over, and now they were laughing together, champagne glasses clinking. Happy anniversary, I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle, like it could crack at any second. Silence. Megan's eyes scanned me up and down, cold, unbothered by my cane or my sweat-dampened hair. Her tone flat. Audrey, you're late. The Uber took a while, I said, limping closer. Kevin didn't even look up. He was too busy refilling her glass. Audrey, this is Tiffany. We met last week. Hi, Tiffany chirped, waving lazily, not even moving to offer me a seat. My heart sank. I looked at the table. 4 settings, 4 chairs, all taken, all comfortable. My mother gestured vaguely to a space between the table and the waiter station. Well, we didn't know if you were actually coming, seeing as you're always so busy with work, she said, sipping her wine. And Kevin wanted to bring Tiffany. It's their first date. First date? I repeated it in my head. This is your 30th anniversary dinner. I organized it. I paid the deposit. Don't make a scene. My dad said, cheerful but dismissive, it's just a chair. It's just a chair. I repeated silently. My voice trembled slightly. It's not just a chair. Dad, I just had surgery. I can't stand for 3 hours. Megan rolled her eyes. Oh, stop being dramatic. You walked in here, didn't you? She waved her hand like my pain was a minor inconvenience. We can't ask Tiffany to move. That would be rude. Just stand for now. Maybe pull up a stool from the bar later if one frees up. Stand for a 7-course dinner while my ankle throbs like it's going to explode, Kevin laughed, mouth full of bread. You look like a waiter in that suit anyway. The table erupted in laughter. Tiffany giggled behind her hand. Even my dad chuckled, and Megan cracked a smile. Stand for now. I stared at them, at my family, the people I had practically killed myself to please, the weight of the envelope in my pocket pressed against my ribs, $5,000, all for people who wouldn't even give me a chair. And then, in that moment, the pain in my ankle gone, replaced by a cold, crystal clarity I had never felt before. It was the death of hope. I smiled. Not the nice smile you want in a family photo. I stepped closer, voice dropping an octave, cutting through their laughter. I reached into my jacket and lifted the envelope. The gold foil seal glinted under the bistro lights. I was going to give you this, I said calmly. $5,000 for your cruise. Happy anniversary. Megan's eyes widened. Kevin froze mid-forklift. Tiffany sat, oblivious. I tucked the envelope back into my inner pocket, pressed it against my heart. I think I'll keep this for someone who saves me a seat. I turned on my heel. Megan's voice rose, shrill. Wait, Audrey? You don't have to go. Sit down. We can get a chair. Gary half rising. Too late, I signaled the waiter hovering nearby. Cancel my part of the bill and the champagne. Put it on Dad's tab. As I stepped into the cool night air, the pain in my leg returned in full force, but my chest felt lighter than air. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. But the cure. Finally, it was in my hands. You know, it wasn't just about showing up that night. I had poured everything into making this anniversary dinner perfect. I'd been working double shifts for months, skipping therapy appointments that my doctor had literally said I couldn't miss, just to make the numbers work. The $5,000 envelope in my pocket, that wasn't just cash, it was a symbol, a culmination of months of tiny, painful sacrifices. Ramen for 2 months, cutting corners everywhere I could, just so my parents could finally take that second honeymoon they'd been whining about for years. And sure, I wanted them to have it, but I wanted them to see me, to finally acknowledge all the effort I'd put in. It wasn't just about money, it was about being seen, about being part of their lives in a way that mattered. And the irony, I was invisible in ways that stung deeper than the surgery pain that still throbbed in my leg. Kevin, my brother, he had this charm, this effortless way of existing that made everyone swoon. He'd been the star of the family from day one, high school quarterback, prom king, the golden child. Megan adored him. Every compliment he got reflected back on her. Every misstep I made, barely noticed. I was the quiet one, the studious one, the one who planned, who organized, who worked while the spotlight shined somewhere else. It wasn't that I hated him, I didn't. But growing up, I started noticing patterns. Kevin got the praise for being charming, for existing. I got used to being the fixer, the one who smoothed over problems that weren't mine, the one who worked double shifts to keep the house afloat when they needed money. And it continued into adulthood. When I started my event planning business, it was a hobby. Megan had said, cute but not serious. Meanwhile, Kevin floundered. And she called me, not to support me, but to ask if I could help him get a VP interview he wasn't qualified for. When I bought my own apartment, she critiqued the crown molding. I remember the slow burn of financial abuse too. The loans to Gary that never panned out. The car insurance for Kevin when he forgot to pay. The condo rent I covered. It started small, imperceptible. But over time, I realized I was giving everything and getting nothing in return, not validation, not even basic gratitude. And that's the thing about tonight, it wasn't just about the dinner. It was a culmination of decades of being overlooked, of my needs being secondary. I had invested so much, not just in money, but in emotional labor, in physical effort, in navigating their quirks and demands, that the weight of it had been crushing. So here I was, standing in my tuxedo, cane in hand, heart racing, and all I wanted was to be seen, to be recognized for all I had done. The envelope in my pocket was more than just money. It was my proof that I had gone above and beyond, proof that I mattered. And then there was the table, set for 4, my seat taken by Tiffany, a stranger, a prop, really, in Kevin's little performance. And it was Megan's doing. She had orchestrated it all, choosing who sat where, who mattered tonight, and apparently, me not so much. The realization hit hard. It wasn't just an oversight, it was a calculated statement about who was important and who was disposable. My chest tightened, the air seemed thicker, and my mind raced through every slight, every moment of invisibility I had endured in their house, in their lives. College graduations overlooked because Kevin had a crisis with some girl. Birthday money redirected to buy him golf clubs. The countless times my achievements were minimized, overlooked, or used as leverage. And yet, I had always been there. The silent supporter, the fixer, the one who made things happen behind the scenes. I had hoped, maybe naively, that if I gave enough, did enough, fixed enough, they would finally notice me. Tonight was supposed to be that night. And now, standing there, I felt that familiar stab of betrayal. The envelope felt heavier, as if it carried not just cash, but all the unspoken resentment and exhaustion of years. And I realized the irony was brutal. The very thing I had worked so hard to give them, the gift that represented months of sacrifice, they didn't even have the courtesy to acknowledge in the moment. I could feel the sweat prickling at my hairline, the tremor in my hand, and yet it wasn't from exertion anymore. It was from the sheer emotional force of understanding that I had been invisible all along, and that tonight, my efforts were, in their eyes, irrelevant. I thought about my ankle, the surgery, the pain, the physical reminders of my commitment to their convenience over my own well-being. And now, it was amplified by the emotional pain, the cold, crystalline clarity that my value had always been measured not by what I could accomplish, but by how I could serve Kevin's shine, how I could be a tool in Megan's carefully curated image of family perfection. And in that moment, I realized that the confrontation to come wasn't just about a chair, or about Tiffany, or even about the dinner itself. It was about all the years of feeling unseen, unheard, and unvalued, about reclaiming space, recognition, and dignity, about proving to myself, if no one else, that my worth was not contingent on my ability to appease them. I could feel the tension coiling tighter in my chest, the quiet fury that had been simmering for decades finally bubbling to the surface. The stakes weren't just tonight, they were everything. My body ached. Sure, but the betrayal cut deeper. And here's the thing. I'd spent my life smoothing over these cracks, holding together a family foundation that was never built to support me. And now, I had the choice to step into the spotlight for myself, to finally let them see the consequences of their favoritism, their manipulations, their blatant disregard for my sacrifices. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I could feel my pulse in my ears as I approached the table again in my mind, imagining the words I might speak, the reactions I might provoke, the weight of the envelope as a shield and a statement all in one. And yet, beneath it all, there was that little spark of hope, faint but insistent maybe, just maybe. Tonight they would see me, not just the sister who fixes problems, not just the banker, the chauffeur, the planner, but me, the real me. And as that thought settled, the humiliation of the moment, my seat taken, Kevin laughing, Tiffany perched there as if she belonged, shifted into something else. A resolve, a quiet, hard-edged determination that this was the moment I finally drew a line. And, okay, I admit it. A tiny part of me even smiled at the absurdity after years of bending, sacrificing, and smoothing. Finally, there was a chance to stand up, not just figuratively, but literally. In my emerald tuxedo and with my cane. Tonight was mine, one way or another. I rounded the corner toward the private alcove, my cane digging into the floor with each shaky step, and froze. The table was set perfectly, glowing under the soft chandelier light, 4 settings, 4 chairs, and right there, in my seat, Tiffany, blonde hair, way too young looking, dressed like she was at a summer party, not a 30th anniversary dinner. She was leaning into Kevin, laughing at some joke he'd made. I could feel my stomach twist. My mother, Megan, looked up, eyes cold, scanning me from head to toe. Not a flicker of concern for the sweat beading at my hairline, or the tremor in my hand, or the fact that I'd been through surgery 3 weeks ago. Just the flat, unbothered gaze of someone who decided I didn't matter tonight. "Audrey," she said, her voice flat, precise. "You're late." I forced a smile, wincing as I tried to put weight on my bad leg. "The Uber took a while," I said, limping closer. Kevin didn't look up. He was too busy topping off Tiffany's wine. Oh, right. Kevin, I thought bitterly. He had promised to pick me up. I was standing here because he couldn't bother to show. Tiffany waved lazily. "Hi," she said. No attempt to get up. No sense of acknowledging me at all. My chest tightened. I gestured at the table. "Mom, where am I supposed to sit?" Megan waved her hand vaguely toward a corner near the waiter station. "Well, we didn't know if you were coming. You're always so busy with work," she said, as if my presence was a logistical inconvenience, not a person. And Kevin wanted to bring Tiffany. It's their first date. First date. The words tasted bitter. "This is your 30th anniversary dinner," I reminded myself, quietly. I organized it. I paid the deposit. I adjusted my cane, trying to breathe evenly, trying to mask the tremor. My father spoke up, light and dismissive. "Don't make a scene." "Audrey, it's just a chair. Just a chair." I echoed it in my head. "It's not just a chair." "Dad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I just had surgery. I can't stand for 3 hours." Megan rolled her eyes, exasperated, like my suffering was theatrics. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. You walked in here, didn't you?" "You're fine. We can't ask Tiffany to move. That would be rude. Just stand for now. Maybe pull up a stool from the bar later if one frees up. Stand." For a 7-course meal, with my ankles screaming, I stared at them, disbelief coursing through my veins. Kevin chuckled, mouth full of bread. "You look like a waiter in that suit anyway," he said. The table erupted in laughter. Tiffany giggled behind her hand. My father even shook his head, chuckling lightly. Megan let out a small smile. "Stand for now." My eyes fell to the envelope in my pocket. $5,000. My entire effort, my sacrifices, right there in my hand, heavy against my ribs. And suddenly, the pain in my ankle didn't matter anymore. It was replaced by this sharp, crystalline clarity. The death of hope, cold and precise. I forced a smile that wasn't warm. I lifted the envelope from my pocket, holding it in plain view. "I was going to give you this," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through the laughter like a knife. $5,000 for your cruise. Happy anniversary." Megan's eyes went wide. Kevin froze mid-forklift. Tiffany still sat, oblivious, sipping her wine. I tucked the envelope back into my inner pocket, pressing it against my heart. "I think I'll keep this for someone who saves me a seat," I thought, And then I turned. I started walking toward the door, each step deliberate, a silent declaration. Megan's voice rose, sharp and shrill. "Wait, Audrey. You don't have to go. Sit down. We can get a chair." My father half rising, alarm in his eyes. Too late. I called over my shoulder without breaking stride. I signaled the waiter who had been hovering nearby. "Cancel my part of the bill and the champagne. Put it on Dad's tab." Outside, the night air hit me like relief. Cold, crisp, a little sharp. My leg was screaming again, pain lancing up to my knee, but I felt lighter than air, lighter than I had in years. The betrayal years of invisible labor, of being the fixer. The one who held everything together was worse than any diagnosis or physical ache I'd endured. But the cure, well, that was finally in my hands. The moment the heavy glass door swung shut behind me, the adrenaline crashed, and my leg nearly gave out. I stumbled, barely catching myself on the valet stand. Leo, a young valet who knew me from dozens of events, rushed over, eyes wide. "Miss Audrey, are you okay?" I straightened, forcing composure. "I'm fine. Leo, just call me a car, please." I sank onto the stone bench outside, trembling. Not from pain alone, but from the weight of what I had just done. 29 years of never saying no, of always fixing, always giving, always sacrificing for a family that didn't seem to notice it all collided in that moment. My phone buzzed, Mom calling, I declined, Dad calling, declined again, Kevin calling. I stared at the screen, the boy who had once pushed me off a swing set, who had laughed as I fell, now sitting across from his girlfriend in my seat, laughing and oblivious. I declined, set it to silent. The Uber arrived. Sleek and quiet, I slid in the back seat, sank into the leather, exhaling like I hadn't breathed in hours. As we pulled away, I glanced back at the restaurant. Gary burst from the doors, phone to his ear, frantic, looking not for me, but for the envelope that had just walked away. I sat in the darkness of my apartment later, glass of water in hand, silence enveloping me, my sanctuary, my war room. I replayed every word, every gesture. Just stand for now. It wasn't mere rudeness. It was a dismissal of my humanity. And the realization hit like a sledgehammer. The antagonist wasn't bad luck, wasn't even Kevin. It was Megan, the architect, the one who had written the rules for my entire life, the one who had decided who sat and who stood. And for 29 years, I had followed them. But tonight, I had broken the pattern. Tonight, I had decided my worth wasn't theirs to determine. I held the envelope in my hands, felt its weight against my chest, and for the first time in years, I stood, literally and figuratively, for myself. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And walking away, even through pain and disbelief, I felt something I hadn't in decades: agency. I finally got home, limping through the door and closing it behind me, the quiet of my apartment hitting me like a wave. Normally, the silence was comforting, a place to exhale, but tonight it felt different, protective, maybe, but also heavy, loaded with the echo of everything I had just walked away from. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down on the couch, staring at the envelope still resting in my jacket pocket, feeling its weight, not just of cash, but of all the years it represented, years of sacrifice, late nights, missed therapy appointments, skipped meals, extra shifts, everything I had done to support a family that didn't see me. And suddenly, it hit me. The betrayal wasn't just tonight. It was decades in the making, the quiet, crushing kind of betrayal that accumulates slowly until one day it explodes in your chest and you can't ignore it. I thought about the first time I'd paid for Kevin's car insurance because he forgot, or the time I had covered the rent on their condo when they claimed to be downsizing for lifestyle reasons, when really Gary had gambled away their retirement fund. All those small, quiet transfers of money, the loans, the favors, the careful calculations, the personal sacrifices they had been feeding an entire ecosystem that existed to elevate Kevin and shield Megan. And for what? Recognition, gratitude, nothing like that, just invisible labor, tucked behind a veneer of normal family life. I leaned back, letting my eyes close for a second, and the memories rolled in like a tide. College graduation forgotten because Kevin had a crisis with a girl. Birthday money taken to buy him golf clubs. Invitations to family events always skewed. Praise and attention always for him. And Megan. She curated her perfect Facebook life. Posts filled with Kevin's achievements. Cropped me out of family photos because I didn't fit the image she wanted to project. I had been the fixer, the planner, the one smoothing cracks with my own blood, sweat, and tears, and yet I was replaceable. The words from the restaurant echoed in my head. Just stand for now. I realized it wasn't about the chair. It wasn't even about the envelope or the dinner. It was about a lifetime of being told, subtly and overtly, that my needs came last, that my sacrifices were expected, not appreciated. I traced the edge of the envelope, feeling the slight texture of the cream-colored paper, and thought about every dollar I had earned, every hour I had sacrificed. And the clarity of the moment hit me. I wasn't just hurt by their disregard, I was enraged at how deeply they had taken advantage of me. And I started replaying the past, the big things and the small, the loans Gary never paid back, the money funneled to Kevin, the favors, the condo, the hidden costs of keeping a family afloat that had never even said thank you. And yet, I had held on, believing that if I gave enough, worked hard enough, smoothed enough problems, I would finally earn a place at the table. Tonight proved that even if I bought the table, I still wouldn't be allowed to sit at it. I sipped my water, mind spinning. I remembered the voicemail from Gary, breathless, desperate, talking about how the bill was more than they expected, how I couldn't just leave them with it, and the audacity of the words, the casual dismissal of my pain, my ankle, my humanity. Don't be selfish, he had said. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound, shaking my head. Selfish, I had risked my financial security to give them a gift, to cover a cruise, to try, for once, to earn their attention, their recognition. And yet, all they saw was an opportunity for leverage. I thought about the condo lease, how I had signed for it, covered 40% of the rent, guaranteed their lifestyle because they thought the dinner, the embarrassment, would give them power over me. But they had forgotten one crucial thing: the primary leaseholder, the one with the credit score, the one with control, was me. And that realization, that clarity was intoxicating. My leg throbbed, my ankle reminding me I wasn't invincible, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I could see it all now: the ecosystem of their family, the hierarchy, the favoritism, the manipulation, the slow, invisible theft of my energy, my money, my time. Kevin had charm, Megan had control, and I had been the silent enabler of my own erasure. I could almost laugh at it now, the absurdity of it, the precision of their pattern. But then, no, it wasn't funny. It was enraging. And beneath the anger, there was a cold, hard clarity. I realized the envelope wasn't just a gift anymore. It was a symbol, yes, but also a tool. The power to reclaim some of what I had lost. The leverage I had been denied for decades. And for the first time in years, I felt it: control, agency. I wasn't just the fixer, the doormat, the invisible laborer anymore. I could act, and I would. I thought about the messages, the missed calls, the texts, Mom, Dad, Kevin, all trying to reach me. I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed to process, to plan, to hold on to this moment of lucidity before I made a move. I remembered the times I had covered for them, The loans, the support, the quiet suffering. Each sacrifice had been calculated, measured, and yet, tonight, I finally understood the extent to which it had been exploited. I could feel the resolve building, a quiet fire in my chest. I thought about my leg, about the envelope, about the small, powerless feeling of standing at that table earlier. And now, here, in the darkness of my apartment, it was different. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was considering, calculating, preparing. The weight of the envelope was still there, but now it was empowering. I replayed the scene in my head, my mother dismissing me, Kevin oblivious, Tiffany perched as if she belonged. And in the echo of those moments, I found the resolve to act. I could feel years of suppressed anger, of unacknowledged effort, turning into focus. I could see the patterns, the theft, the manipulation, the favoritism, and I knew, finally, that I wasn't powerless. I wasn't the child who had to accommodate their whims. I wasn't the fixer, the bank, the planner. I was me. And me meant boundaries. Me meant reclaiming my time, my energy, my resources. I let out a long breath, tasting the clarity. For the first time, I realized that the injustice wasn't just situational, it was systemic in our family. And the next moves, the next steps, they had to reflect that truth. I sat back, letting the night settle around me, the apartment dark and quiet, the weight of years pressing down but also sharpening my focus. I would act, strategically, deliberately, and finally, on my terms. And as I sat there, nursing my leg, feeling the throbbing and rhythm with my heartbeat, I could feel something I hadn't in a long time resolve. This wasn't just a reaction to being humiliated at a dinner table. This was about reclaiming my life, my agency, my dignity, and finally acknowledging the exploitation for what it had been. The clarity was painful but invigorating. The betrayal had been deep, systemic, and obvious now, and I knew that tonight, in the quiet aftermath, was the first night I truly understood the depth of what had been done to me and the depth of the power I now held to change it. The next morning, I booted up my laptop, still wincing from my ankle, and logged into the joint family account I'd been monitoring. At first, everything looked normal, but then I froze. The balance was nowhere near where it should have been. I clicked into the transaction history, and my stomach dropped. Withdrawals, after withdrawals, 2,000 here, 3,000 there, 5,000 gone, all funneled to an account labeled K-Star Enterprises, Kevin's name, my brother, and my hands started shaking. K-Star. His so-called business, the one that had failed at crypto, dropshipping, all of it. And somehow, here it was, siphoning nearly $18,000 from me. I felt a cold sweat break out across my neck, my heart thumping like crazy. I grabbed the phone, dialed the bank, trying to keep my voice steady. First National, I need to report unauthorized activity, I said, fumbling slightly over my words, trying to keep control. The lady on the other end, Sarah, typed away. I see here the transfers were authorized via telephone banking by the other account holder. Gary Miller, she said, my father, the man who had laughed when I was told to stand. He hadn't just watched the humiliation, he had funded it. I whispered, almost to myself, I see, thank you. I hung up, feeling the weight of betrayal in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not a crack, but a canyon. And suddenly, everything snapped into focus. I wasn't just hurt, I was being exploited, systematically. Kevin had orchestrated the theft, Gary had facilitated it, and the longer I thought, the more I realized Megan had to be involved, too. There was no way she hadn't known. My mind raced, connecting dots, recalling past favors, loans, cover-ups, every small instance of invisible labor, every financial sacrifice, suddenly had context. It wasn't just negligence, it was collusion. And that's when I shifted into action mode. First, I needed to secure the assets. I logged into the property management portal for the Riverside Lofts, the condo I was the guarantor on. Luxury for 2 people with 0 income, and I held the keys. Lease renewal was pending, due by Friday. I hovered over the digital signature button labeled Renew Lease. My leg throbbed, but my fingers hovered with determination. I thought about the surgery, the car accident, Tiffany in my seat, all of it, and then I clicked Terminate Lease. Confirmation popped up. Occupants must vacate by the 30th. Yes, I clicked yes. Done. Not yet satisfied. I needed to understand the full extent of the rot. Who else was involved? How deep did it go? I called David, a private investigator I had hired before for vetting vendors. When he answered, I didn't waste a second. I need a full run on Kevin Miller and look into a Tiffany associated with him. Where did the $18,000 go in the last 3 weeks? I need it by tomorrow. David hesitated. Audrey, that's your brother. That's a thief, I said, cutting him off. My hands were still trembling, my mind sharp with a mix of fear and calculation. Every call, every click, every transfer in front of me now had to be documented, understood, and used strategically. I could almost feel the pieces clicking together. Kevin's schemes, the withdrawals, Megan's complicity, they were all part of a system I had tolerated for too long. And now I had the chance to confront it, armed with proof, prepared to act decisively. I leaned back, letting the adrenaline wash over me. It wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming control, asserting boundaries, exposing truths, and finally stepping out of the shadows of manipulation. The betrayal was staggering, but so was the clarity. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a quiet, precise, cold kind of power, fueled by every slight and every sacrifice that had led me to this exact moment. Monday morning hit like a sledgehammer. I was at my office, early, trying to bury myself in planning a gala, pretending my personal life wasn't imploding. At 10:15, the receptionist buzzed me. Audrey, your parents are here. They say it's an emergency. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Of course they were here. They couldn't reach me by phone. So now they were bringing the circus to my workspace. Send them to conference room B, I said. Sharp, no hesitation. Do not let them into the main area. I grabbed a file folder, thick with printouts of bank statements, the lease termination confirmation, everything. When I walked in, Megan was pacing, heels clicking on the polished concrete floor, looking furious, like she owned the room. Gary sat, pale, shrinking, hands twisting a baseball cap nervously. Megan spun around the second I entered. How dare you, she hissed, voice sharp. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? The manager threatened to call the cops. We had to put the bill on 4 different credit cards. I limped to the head of the table, steadying myself on the cane. Hello to you too, Mom, I said, voice calm but firm. I didn't sit. I needed the height advantage. Megan snapped, slamming her designer bag onto the table. You left us there with Tiffany. That poor girl was mortified. Tiffany, I repeated, leaning slightly forward, tone flat, the girl sitting in my seat. Gary's voice came out weak, trying to defend. It was just a chair. Audrey, God, why are you so petty? Petty? I opened the folder and slid the bank statements across the table. It stopped in front of Gary. I let my voice drop. Steady. Icy. Is stealing $18,000 from your daughter petty? Dad's silence fell like a weight. The air conditioning hummed, a stark contrast to the tension in the room. Gary looked down at the paper, face paling further. I continued, voice calm but deliberate. A loan implies you intend to pay it back. You stole from the emergency fund. My emergency fund. Megan instinctively moved in front of him, like a shield. "We needed it," she said sharply. "Kevin's in trouble. Audrey, real trouble. He has debts. We couldn't let him get hurt. We were going to pay it back once Gary's settlement came in." I shook my head, voice soft but cutting. "Mom, I know. I filed the paperwork for him. You don't get to justify theft with fear." Megan's composure cracked. She screamed, words spilling. "You have so much. You have this job, this office, your fancy suits. You have everything. And you begrudge your brother a little help." I laughed, harsh, incredulous. "A little help? I've paid your rent for 5 years. I've paid your car insurance, paid for vacations. And when I show up with 5,000 more, you tell me to stand in the corner." Megan shouted over me. "That's what families do? They support each other." I leaned forward, pointing to the second sheet in the folder, sliding the lease termination notice toward them. "No, that's what hosts do for parasites. Since we're talking about support, you should probably see this." Megan snatched the paper up, eyes widening in disbelief. "Termination. What is this?" she whispered. I looked directly at her, voice steady. "I'm not renewing the lease on the condo. I'm removing myself as guarantor. You have 30 days to vacate, or you can sign a new lease yourselves if you pass the credit check." Gary, alarmed, jumped up. "We won't pass. You're making us homeless. You have 18,000 of my money." I shrugged lightly, a small, almost imperceptible motion. "Maybe Kevin can lend it back. Or maybe Tiffany has a guest room." Megan's face twisted. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we did for you, we raised you. We put a roof over your head." I leaned forward, calm and assertive. "And I just paid for that roof for 5 years. The transaction is complete. We're even. I will fix this." Megan hissed, grabbing Gary's arm. "I will tell everyone what you've done. Your aunt, your cousins, everyone. You'll be alone. Audrey, completely alone." I looked at her softly, but my voice was steady, unwavering. "I was alone at that dinner table. Mom, I've been alone for a long time. At least now, I won't be broke." I pointed toward the door. "Get out before I call security." Megan froze, realizing my resolve was real. Gary, silent, pale, defeated, followed her gaze. By noon, notifications started flooding my phone. Facebook, texts, messages, all spinning their narrative. But I tuned it out. The confrontation had happened. I had evidence, I had clarity, and I had set my boundary. The room felt heavy and quiet once they left, the tension lingering like smoke. And in that moment, sitting there in my office, Kane at my side, I felt something I hadn't in decades control. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I had set the rules, I had drawn the line, and for the first time, I felt the weight of a sacrifices transform, not into resentment, but into agency. Sunday at Aunt Clara's house was usually predictable: lukewarm potato salad, probing questions about my love life, and Mom holding court like some kind of monarch in a folding chair. But today, the air felt charged, heavy, like the sky just before a storm. I arrived 20 minutes late, sharp black blazer, jeans, cane in hand. I didn't bring a covered dish, just a slim, leather-bound portfolio and a flash drive. As I stepped through the sliding glass door, 30 heads turned. Cousins who usually ignored me now stared with something like hostility. Aunt Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. Megan, near the grill, froze. Her hand flew to her chest. Perfect victim act in place. "Audrey," she quavered. I didn't think you'd come after what you've done to us." I limped further onto the patio, voice steady. "I'm just here to clear the air. Mom, you posted quite a story online. I thought the family deserved the director's cut. Kevin, holding a beer, scoffed. We don't want to hear your lies. Tiffany nowhere. Obviously. Her contract didn't cover family barbecues. I scanned the crowd, letting the tension simmer. You're kicking mom and dad out on the street? Someone muttered. Is that all we need to know? I asked, looking around. Is that really all you need to know, Aunt Clara, who had commented on Mom's post, hand over her mouth, Uncle Bob texting, calling me a snake? I ignored the noise, focusing. Megan stepped forward, voice sharp, panicked. Because you make a little money and think you're better than everyone. You think because you bought the apartment, you own us, you own your parents. I met her gaze calmly. I don't own you. But I do own the $18,000 you stole from my bank account. Silence. Absolute. A bird chirped. Only sound. Kevin yelled, "That's a lie. She's crazy." I looked past him, at Dad. Am I lying? Gary sat small on a bench, staring at his shoes. Megan hissed, eyes wild, signaling him, "Stick to the script. Protect the lie. Gary, tell her." Gary rose slowly, shifting from Megan to Kevin to me, struggling, 30 years of submission clashing with 3 days of truth. "She's not lying," he said, voice quiet, hoarse. Gasps rippled through the yard. I clicked the flash drive into the outdoor TV, remote in hand. I deal in details. I said, voice projecting. Photos appeared: Venmo transactions, $500 to Tiffany Stone's, memo dinner date service. Kevin's face drained, crimson. Cousins whispered, She's a model, someone said. Shocked, I corrected them. Tiffany isn't his girlfriend. She's an escort he hired, paid for with my medical savings. Kevin staggered backward, eyes wide. I clicked again. Spreadsheet on the screen, K-Star Enterprises, outgoing transfers, DraftKings, crypto scams, luxury car rentals for the weekend. I looked at Kevin. You weren't paying off loan sharks? You were renting a Mercedes to impress a girl you were paying by the hour. Megan's face went pale. She looked at everyone, hands shaking. I didn't know. I thought we were saving him. Gary muttered something under his breath. Stunned. I pressed on, calm, relentless. Then explain this. Screen enlarged, a single transfer, $3,000 to L. Miller Consulting. Date October 14th, 2 days after Dad sent the first chunk of stolen money. I turned to Megan, voice ringing out. Mom, you had Kevin send you a kickback. You knew Dad was stealing from me. You encouraged it. Then you took $3,000 for yourself. Spa weekend, new dress, your choice. You monetized your husband's theft and my surgery fund. Silence, heavy, suffocating. Aunt Clara stepped back, creating a physical gap between Megan and the world. Megan's eyes darted, searching for allies. None. Kevin's face, betrayal etched, realization dawning. Megan whispered, voice small, almost inaudible. I deserve nice things too. But no one echoed her. The ugly, naked truth hung in the air. Gary, still looking small and broken, came to me, shoulder to shoulder. We're leaving the condo on Friday, he said, voice shaking. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back every cent, even if it takes my life. You can come with me to the efficiency apartment I found, or go. But I'm done lying for her. Megan shrank. The queen of the patio, stripped of power. Aunt Clara's icy voice cut through. I think you should go. This is a family gathering. Linda, do you even know what that word means? The fallout was immediate. Megan tried one last spin online, claiming the images were photoshopped. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen Gary's face, the evidence, her admission. By the end of the day, the Riverside lofts were empty. And in that yard, in the heat of exposure, The family hierarchy had shifted irrevocably. After the chaos, life settled in unexpected ways. Megan and Gary separated 2 weeks later, not a dramatic, yelling divorce, just a simple dissolution of a partnership that had already gone bankrupt in every sense that mattered. Megan moved in with her sister in Florida, complaining about humidity and ungrateful children, still sending passive-aggressive birthday cards that I burned unopened. Gary stayed, renting a tiny studio above a garage in the suburbs, mixing paint and cutting keys at a hardware store. It was humble work, hard on his knees, but he did it, and I think, finally, he felt small but real. 6 months after the anniversary dinner, I met him for coffee. I walked in without the cane now, ankle fully healed, and saw him in a booth, wearing his orange work vest. He looked tired, yes, but he looked real. I slid in across from him, and he gave me a smile genuine, crinkly-eyed, the kind you haven't seen in years. He pushed an envelope across the table. Not 5,000 this time, just 200. It's not much, he said softly, looking down at his coffee. But it's the first installment. I did the math silently and laughed. A light, warm sound, not bitter. 92. Huh? I said, teasing lightly. Better eat your vegetables, Dad. He smiled, soft, a little guilty. I know the money doesn't fix it, he said. I know I broke something that can't be glued back together. I let her hurt you because it was easier than fighting her. I was a coward. I nodded. You were, I said, honest. No sugarcoating. That was the old dynamic, the one we'd been trapped in for decades. But I didn't push the envelope back. I took it. Taking it mattered. It meant I respected him enough to hold him accountable. It meant he was an adult, not a dependent I had to shield. We ate our burgers, talked about the weather, his work at the hardware store. It wasn't cinematic. No perfect movie ending hugs. No tears erasing the past. There was still distance, scar tissue that would probably never fully fade. But there was also clarity. I wasn't the bank anymore, the fixer, the doormat. I was just Audrey, sitting across from my father, seeing him responsible for his own life. It felt like a small, hard-won victory. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe without strings attached, without obligations I hadn't agreed to, without invisible debts of loyalty. And slowly, the years of careful, painful, exhausting labor, the financial support, the sacrifices, the stress started to feel like something I owned, not something I'd lost. I had my own apartment, my own income, my own life. Boundaries were no longer abstract ideas. They were tangible, enforceable, necessary. I could choose when and how to engage, when to offer help, and when to withhold it. My father's small gestures, like the $200 installment, were steps toward an honest, cautious relationship. Nothing flashy, nothing perfect, just real. And that was enough. Sitting there, watching him sip his coffee, I realized independence isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about knowing what belongs to you and keeping it. I hadn't needed to teach Megan a lesson or shame Kevin further. That night, in that diner booth, we quietly acknowledged each other's agency. He had lost a wife, a partner, his pride, but he had gained truth. I had lost illusions, but I had gained freedom. There was warmth, yes, but tempered by wariness, a subtle understanding that some scars never fully heal, that some relationships are measured in accountability, not sentimentality. I left the diner feeling lighter. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was present, aware, and for the first time, completely in charge of my own life. And that, I realized, was the kind of closure that mattered: quiet, solid, human, not perfect, but enough to move forward. So that's the story. Standing up, reclaiming your space, your money, your dignity. It's messy, complicated, and honestly, kind of exhausting. But it's worth it. Families are complicated, right? Full of love and betrayal, support and manipulation. But at the end of the day, the power to set boundaries and protect yourself, that's real freedom. If this story resonated with you, go ahead and hit like. Maybe subscribe for more stories like this. I promise, the next one might just surprise you.